Hey everyone, I'm Shane DeApril, co-owner and co-publisher of Campaigns and Elections. Good morning and welcome to our webinar. This is Connecting with Voters in a Crisis-Driven Campaign, Digital and Audio Options for Messaging Effectively Amid COVID-19. Thanks to our sponsor, AdSonica, and thanks to all of you for joining us. A couple of things on the right screen for those tuning in this morning. You will see a chat function and you will see a questions tab. Under the chat tab, that's where you can interact with fellow attendees, other folks who are here listening and watching this morning's webinar. The questions tab, which is just to the right of the chat tab, that is where you can submit questions for our panelists this morning. Please do use that tab throughout. We will be the vast bulk of your questions as we move along in the webinar. You've got the ability there to interact with some of our panelists and chat back and forth in the questions tab. But if you do have questions, please use that questions tab and make a note that you will not see other attendees' questions. So myself and our speakers here, we're the only ones who will see the questions that you pose in that tab. So again, before we start and kind of get into the discussion here, I'd like to briefly introduce all four of our speakers, and then I'd like to ask each one of them to give a little bit more context about their backgrounds, their companies, and we're going to start off with Damian Scragg. He's the GM of Veritonic International. Then we have Gina Isham. She's the composer and sonic brander. Wayne Page. Wayne is the owner of Compelling Entertainment. And then we have William August. She's the founder and CEO of AdSonica. Damian, I'd like to start with you.
Thanks so much, Shane. So good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me on. You'll notice from my accent that I'm from across the pond. But luckily, I've not been asked to join because of my expertise in US politics, but there is some useful stuff that I hope will be helpful. So I'm the GM for Veritonic for International. Just by way of introduction of Veritonic, we're an audio intelligence platform. So fundamentally, what that means is that we provide insight and data to marketers to help them better understand and quantify the most effective way for them to use sound. So we're actually the first analytics platform built specifically to navigate the complexities of the audio market. And audio is one of those areas where data has been lacking over time. And if you think of all the campaigns that you're planning at the moment, you don't do anything, you don't breathe without data. And that data has been missing in audio, and audio should be no different. So whether you're thinking about streaming, radio, or podcast advertising for the candidates, or how they sound compared to their competitors, that's where Veritonic would come in and help. And the last piece on us, just before I let the others introduce themselves, is what makes Veritonic even more interesting is that we're powered by a machine listening and learning algorithm, which means the more data that we add in, the cleverer the platform actually becomes. So we're working with you and with brands to make sure that every penny you spend on audio is a penny well spent, whether you're looking at whether you should create different ads for different platforms, whether you're looking at different voices and whether the candidates should use their own voice for the campaign, and whether you should actually be reevaluating the messaging you use for COVID-19. So that in a nutshell is a little bit of background on what we do.
Damian, thanks. Gina?
Hi, my name is Gina Isham, and my husband and I have an audio and video production company. The audio part of it is called Dreamer Productions, and I create sonic branding, sound design, I compose for production music and entertainment. I got into this world of sound and marketing just recently, just learning how to market our own companies and like how to get in and out and all of that. And I realized that there's this huge opportunity in sound that marketers are not using because it's not the traditional form of marketing. And what I found was it's a lot more cost effective. It's a lot faster. You can create a lot more content and distribute it faster. And in this time of COVID-19, I find that incredibly important because every single day, every hour, things are changing. It's a more real, more raw form of marketing. And I feel like you can relate to your consumer or your constituents better because you're with them in this. So for COVID-19, I think this is an incredibly useful opportunity to get in on something that is already being explored. It just hasn't been fully realized yet. And we're still experimenting. We're still making things up as we go. Excuse me. And so it's a great opportunity for somebody to get in now and create something magical and unique for themselves.
Wayne Page.
Just unmuting there. I am Wayne. My company, Compelling Entertainment, comes from entertainment marketing and production, launching cable networks like Food Network, Animal Planet, and doing a lot of TV series, movies, and a lot of marketing, branding, and entertainment properties that we kind of brought to politics. We partnered with WorldLink and division Connect Media Marketing. WorldLink is a leader in the space of media services and 1,000 half hours a year and 3.7 million spots a year with multiple offices across the country. Our entire kind of focus in the political space, especially, is hyper-targeting. So taking as much as technology is often the darling and the thing that really kind of captures our imagination and we can't wait to use it, messaging, basically content is king. So you can use all the technology, but if you don't deliver messaging that sticks, you'll often have people turn to the technology and go, it didn't work. But truthfully, it did work. And the thing that has been missing has been audio, because we have print, we have audio, we have video, but the audio has kind of been missing from that equation. It's mostly been print and video. And what AdSonica does, what Veritonic does, has brought us into where suddenly audio is the shiny new object, where it's been kind of passed over before. So we're the audio is kind of a perfect match for what we're doing, which is how to connect to people fast, nimble, efficiently, and engaging, and finding new ways to do it.
Yeah. And William, a bit about AdSonica.
Thanks, Sean. So AdSonica was formed in 2018. We started serving customers in 2019. And the sort of fundamental premise of the business was that we had this vast inventory of ordinary display ads out there that got pitifully low performance ratings. And we had the theory that if we added sound to that, we could dramatically improve the efficiency, effectiveness, and reach of those ads. Did a lot of trial and error, got a patent for our process in 2015. And today we deliver advertising with sound across a wide range of industries and platforms. And in particular, we felt that in this year where there's, nobody knows whether there's going to be an in-person event at all of a sudden audio suddenly starts to become a much more compelling and appealing way to deliver messages. Somewhere I saw a statistic the other day that in the last month, 4 times the amount of audio that is being consumed than in prior months. And so we're here today, hopefully, to illuminate you a little bit on the opportunities that campaigns have to use audio to reach in a very personal way individual likely voters and influence them.
Thanks to you all. So right into the discussion then, Wayne, I want to start with you. You talked about content being king. Talk to us about, sound marketing, in this case, sound being audio conceptually. How's it best deployed, particularly in this environment? And what are you seeing that can help some folks that are, tuning in today that are trying to figure out how best to kind of adapt, their programs, their content, their advertising to this kind of new moment we're in?
Enough. I think we start, my original background, I came from a hands-on person, and I started as an audio engineer and editor, and before I got into producing and directing and stuff. And audio is an emotional communicator. And at the end of the day, you really have 2 things. I was saying a little bit before, is there's print in all its traditional and digital forms, and then there's video. And audio has been overlooked. It's like radio, right? Well, the truth is, and I know you'll probably get to it later, Shane, but radio actually delivers 20% more millennials than any other form of ad-supported media. So there's a common senseness to what audio is. So just ask yourself, if something has sound, do I pay attention to it more? And the answer is yes, always, right? Is that if something makes, pay attention to it more. But there hasn't been technology really that, again, was that shiny object that delivered a medium ground that delivered print and audio together. And the problem in campaigns is you have a time, a real time, and a media cycle that is moving not only by the days, but by the hours. So you need to be reactive with your messaging. You have tons of platforms to distribute on, from social media, all forms of digital, television, radio, OTTs, billboards, lots of ways to distribute. And again, messaging content is key. So don't blame the technology if your messaging's not good. But in all those platforms, there suddenly are ways to deliver specific hyper-targeted messaging. It's like when broadcast went to cable, suddenly there was Food Network, because I was there. I did the marketing brand that launched Food Network and Animal Planet and worked on MTV, Disney Channel, all these different things. And everyone wanted to deliver niche messaging. Now those are the broad-based messaging. We can deliver on a one-to-one basis. But how do you do video ads that fast? You can't, okay? I mean, you can do quick cuts of things, but you can with audio. So the exciting thing about what's going on with audio is that you can take banner ads, GIFs, things that you can move really quickly. You could take one campaign message and turn it into 30, 40, 50 different hyper-targeted messaging. But now by adding audio to it, it makes someone go, what's that? And listen. And I know we'll probably go into some other things about it, but that's the biggest part of the audio technology, is that it absolutely works in engagement. It hasn't previously existed. And for campaigns specifically, which have to react quickly, cost efficiently, and touch people, there it is. It's the perfect timing of technology meeting a need.
I think
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to add to some of what Wayne was saying, because what I think we've seen, not so much now, but kind of back in the past, was that people tended to take a TV or a video campaign and kind of strip out the audio element and use that for audio advertising, which honestly is lazy, but it's not a proper strategy to get, audio's a kind of what Wayne was saying. It's a very intimate experience, particularly radio and podcast into something you want to listen to. And audio can happen to you whilst you're doing other things. There's enough studies that have been done about the encoding of audio into somebody's head. And there was a study over in the UK that was done that said, you could be doing the ironing, you could be doing the washing up, you could be doing anything. And the impact on recall and intent to do the action, purchase intent, vote for a particular candidate is not impacted. Whereas with television or video alone, you have to watch it because the videos and the audio tie in together. So it's that whole emotional recall element, which kind of almost makes it a no-brainer that you should use audio-specific tactics for this, particularly at a time where we don't have the ability to get a huge crew together and film loads of stuff and take advantage of the sort of nimbleness, if you like, of audio.
And also, just to add to that too, maybe Damien knows the statistics for this or not, but I heard something about podcast advertising, something like it's 60-some% of advertisers on podcasts that are projecting to local podcast listeners. 60% of those people will actually follow up on those ads that go on there. They trust the hosts. They trust these shows that they watch. I don't understand exactly why that is, but it seems like a very high number to me. But like the guys have been saying too, it's just so sincere. And in this time, that's what people want. They don't want to be sold to at this point. They don't want the same messaging that they had in February. March changed everything, you have to change to the time. And, like it's been said, this isn't new technology. Voice technology and voice AI, voice assistants, it's been coming it's been in the works for quite a while. So it's just kind of accelerating what's already going to happen. So even if COVID-19 were to end tomorrow, like if we were all able to go back to normal, which won't be normal, this is something that's happening. So it just makes sense to take this opportunity when you know that people are listening, people are waiting for some sort of messaging that they can relate to. And if in the political arena, which I'm not as well versed in, but I want to be able to relate to a candidate. And if they're just kind of blasting out there telling their message, that's one thing. But if you're like in my ear and you're just talking about what you're going through right now and being real, and it's stripped down, it's raw, I think that's so much more effective.
Yeah, agreed. You know, voice is incredibly powerful. I mean, you kind of even go back, if you go way back, you know, to radio, back to the kind of Second World War. And if you think about FDR and Churchill, you know, the US and the UK were gathered around their wirelesses, as they were called back then, to listen to their voices, because they trusted, you know, their president and their prime minister to kind of guide through the dark times. And it's that kind of power of voice that we, you know, the candidates now need to think about. Is not only is, we're voting for somebody who's going to lead our country for the next 4 years and maybe another 4 years after that, but you know, this is a particularly tough time. You know, the economy's down, people are struggling. You know, nobody's really sure how they should be reacting, and so the power of the voice, going all the way back through prime ministers over time and presidents, that the power of their voice has been key to how successful that they've been.
Yeah. Go ahead, Shane.
No, I was going to say that a lot of good stuff to unpack there, and I wanted to throw it to you, Wayne, next, because, you know, to kind of amplify the point that Damien made, and then also Gina made about, you know, how voice has got to be something that is, you know, you can't just take, you know, the VO from a digital ad and say, okay, now this is audio only, right? Not only is that lazy, but it's also ineffective in terms of what you're trying to do. And, you know, frankly, campaigns have this tendency to do things like that, right? They have that tendency to take the 30-second or the 60-second TV spot and say, oh, hey, we shot this for TV, but now it's our digital ad, right? And that's not wise in that context. And you know, as Damien pointed out, not wise in the audio context either. So Wayne, could you talk a little bit about, you know, how you sort of approach it differently and approach it with audio?
Sure. And you know, in my background, especially, you know, on marketing promotion with networks, where we do hundreds and hundreds of spots and campaigns, and also have to be reacting really quick. And these are television, so, you know, you need to almost be building a factory in creative and you know, both short and long range. Well, with the campaigns, it's like I said, it's can be hourly the way things are changing. And the audio is a device, you know, cost effective, nimble, that really can attach you. Again, the thing that that we're really kind of focused on is how to hyper target, because if you have, especially in a national campaign, but even a local campaign, where people live, what they do, where they come from, what's their background as far as, you know, where they work, what's their community like, you know, is you can put a message out there, because normally you're looking at a positioning line, a slogan, a certain messaging that you may have a positioning line that stays through, and then slogans that kind of adapt to what's going on, but everybody will take them in differently. So how do you say, if there's plumbers here, farmers here, you know, highly educated, less educated, urban, rural, suburban, how do you reach all those people with something more impactful than just the same message? It can be a great message, but how do you do it? Well, you can do it with audio. Video, which is fantastic, don't get me wrong, the inventory is more costly. Doing the video spots is more costly. There's a lot of more rights involved, a lot of things to do. So to turn in something that is maybe one message into 30 spots, okay, you can do that with audio. So it's not just in what someone says, though. It is the ambient sound, okay, that can be localized. It can be the ability to click on an ad and have it come in bilingual. and be able to target the ad by who you are, what your IP address is, and targeting triggering that language. It can be the music that's in there. I did an event years ago when I was first starting out with Advertising Age. It was a big seminar, a couple thousand people, and the experiment was to take a clip from a movie and not change anything except the music. And I think I did 12 different versions and played it. And that movie was a sci-fi, horror, rom-com, comedy, like just by changing the music, not a word of dialogue, nothing. And people were like stunned. Audio is an emotional communicator. So being able to take, and what Damien's company does is it actually analyzes that. So you can do 15 different versions of a spot with audio, and they'll tell you what's the best mix. So it's not just what the message is voice, it's the background sounds that can transport you and make someone feel like you're there. If you have a picture of a candidate, but the background sounds like you're in a rural area, a suburban area, an urban area, okay? The music is there. What's being said is key. What the graphic changes is key. Suddenly you're nimble, you're engaging, you're efficient. So that to me is the excitement about what's going on right now with audio tech.
And just to interject for Wayne too, I heard
so
about.
let me jump in here for one second.
Yes. Go ahead.
So I mean, what we're hearing and what we're seeing in the panel today is that audio is a really powerful storyteller. I'm reminded of a pretty famous radio spot done back in, I think, the 60s by Stan Freberg, where he, just by the sound of his voice and the addition of a couple of sound effects, paints this incredible picture for the listener. And, what we do at Sonica is basically take what you've just heard everybody talk about and, take those audio assets, combine them with standard ordinary display ads, and push them out to the vast reaches of the display networks. I mean, there are literally billions of impressions every hour in display, and we're able to take that ad creative, the 30 or 40 spots that Wayne creates, assemble them with audio and push them out in 5 minutes or less. And so we built our entire business around the idea that we need to be nimble, we need to be agile, and we need to be really fast on our feet in terms of getting political messages out there. And in particular, this year, we really set our business out to deliver what really matters most to a voter, and that's a feeling of connection with a candidate or an issue that's out there. And recently, we did some research ourselves and found that amongst likely voters in 2020, 65% of them said that they played a political video to hear it, not to see it, because they feel that voice is more informative and that the slickly produced video is really more manipulative than hearing the authenticity of a person's voice. So we very much see that through what we do with software are all these things that everybody else is talking about.
It's actually, it's interesting. So a lot of what everybody said already, this kind of concept of likability and authenticity of the voice is really, really key to how this is done. There's actually a question from Natalie Shaw that kind of ties this up as well, in terms of how you decide whether you use the candidate's voice or whether you use a voiceover actor. And that really depends. And there's a whole load of, and this is the whole point, right, of testing and experimentation and listening to voices and experimenting with sounds and music to try and make that decision. Because you think about, your political leanings aside, Obama was a great orator and is a great orator. You could put him on any platform and he would sound and look great. Reagan was an actor before he was a politician. So, he was able to use his voice probably in different ways. But even with Obama, they used his voice in campaigns, but there was a lot of testing around storytelling and messaging. and that type of stuff. So you need to kind of think about, and it comes back to Wayne's point about hyper-local targeting and getting it exactly right. Because if you're advertising, if you're working on Donald Trump's campaign, you're advertising an area where he's just got huge following and high approval ratings. You absolutely use Donald Trump's voice. Of course you do, because they love Donald Trump. Maybe it's an area where it's a big Republican following, but maybe Trump himself isn't their favorite, but you still put the Republican messaging out. Do you use Trump's voice? Then maybe in a Democratic stronghold or a swing voter area, what do you do then? And through testing the different voices and different messaging and accents and targeting and judging the mood of the nation and that kind of thing, that's exactly how, to Natalie's question, how you decipher all of the stuff we're talking about is testing it. And there's not one answer. You wouldn't use the same voice, the same campaign, the same setting, as Wayne said.
Excuse me. And I just wanted to interject too. Adam Probolski was making some comments that I just wanted to address. Is one thing that I think that a lot of people do is they have kind of this cookie cutter presentation. Like, you have to have a 30-second spot and a 60-second spot. And the thing about sound marketing is that it's like Netflix. Netflix doesn't have a certain amount of episodes per season or even a length. There was one show that we watched that it took about 30 or 40 minutes before they did the titles, like the title screens and stuff. You can make it up as you go. And so when you have all this content that has to go out, who says it has to be 30 seconds long? Who has to say that it has to fit this box in this structure? The thing about AdSonica is that we're talking about a quick messaging. I believe it's like 12 seconds long. You just put your message in there, and if it's that short, then I believe, in my opinion, you'll be able to have multiple pieces of content, batch it out, and you may not be able to hit like every single platform, but if you have a strong enough message and you're talking right into somebody's ear, I believe that's more effective than having thousands of spots. Maybe you have 100 spots, but they're very effective. So it's just kind of getting down to, what is your message? Not how are you presenting it necessarily, but what are you saying? Like, really think about it. With, I can't remember who was saying this, but for video, it's a lot of glitz and glamour, and I've done this before with watching TV shows. I listened to them when I was writing a lot more production music. I would close off the TV and just listen to what was going on. And it's a completely different message when you're listening to a TV show rather than watching it. A lot of it is just fluff, but the sound part of it really gets into the meat of what is trying to be portrayed or what is being portrayed.
Right.
Well, I would just also jump in with what Gina was talking about, varying lengths, because I think that is, again, the audio technology, what AdSonica does, is perfect for this, but it is an even bigger opportunity. Is that for the most part, everything is looked at outside of social media, but even that, has, it's 6 and 15, but 15, 30 second, 60-second WorldLink and Connect Media Marketing, they control almost $200 million of media inventory a year. And most of that is half hours as far as television goes. But it's also lots of other lengths. It's 2 minutes, it's 3 minutes, it's 30 seconds. And in digital, it's across every platform. So not only can messaging, like Gina's example about, Netflix not having to be a specific time, not only, can you adapt your messaging in such a way that it fits the time of the messaging, but also 30-second spots. If you're trying to buy 30-second spots during the presidential election, those are costly. But 2 minutes, 3 minutes, people aren't buying as many of those. So being able to take, and being able to do a lot of video is also more costly. So being able to do varying lengths of messaging in all the different forms of inventory that exist, where you can shop, locally, you can be peppering people, and whether it's using targeted IP address marketing, whether, whatever form of distribution platform, you're hitting people local TV. But people, when they're sitting at home and local, and someone's running for national office, they don't know that that's not a national ad. So you can be putting out what appears to be, a national message to people by using the different platforms that exist, by targeting them, by using varying lengths, okay, that are not as saturated and bought out, and really looking at an entire campaign that way. And you also have, consultants, you have agencies, you have staffs. So trying to get everybody together, getting all those creatives together, and then saying, okay, how can we take that message and hit it in a lot of platforms? And being able to take, what William was talking about before, and what AdSonica does is take all those banner ads, take all the graphics, take all the GIFs, take those ways that you would message, and by adding audio, you can transform people, engage them at a higher level, more cost efficient, and be more impactful.
Yeah. William.
So there was
no, I just want to jump in
sorry.
here because I do want to get to some of these questions, and one that I want to throw to you.
I was actually going to answer one of the questions, I think is. I was just reading Mark Young's questions, and one of the things that we found is that, first off, we don't do any form of auto playing or pop-ups or anything like that. I mean, any of the bad practices in advertising, are still bad practices. But what we found in the work that we've done is we've seen sometimes as much as 300% to 400% improvement in click-throughs and ultimate conversions, because we're asking people to take, for example, if you see a video ad, you see that little triangle in the center of the image, and instinctively that's a video ad, so maybe you pass on it. But we use words like listen or hear or more information, and we find that guides people to opt into the audio message, and that has proven time and time again, whether it's a brand or whether it's a person or otherwise. So we're optimized around getting people to take action and know what they're getting.
And William, sort of another platform-related question that I think is good to throw to you here from Jennifer Naylor. She sort of is asking specifically about the nuts and bolts of the how-to here with these ads, especially for smaller local campaigns. Can you talk to us about that, and also about accessibility and budget for campaigns that are on the local level?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, AdSonica was designed to be an advertising technology that you could use to send out 1,000 impressions or send out 40 million impressions. It's a software capability that once it's completed, you take it back and you upload it to whatever platform you're currently buying. Also supports the social networks as well. So, AdSonica is a nominal cost add-on to a typical program, and I'm working on a small program in Massachusetts for a candidate, and I mean their budget, I could probably, probably hundreds of dollars as opposed to millions of dollars, but completely applicable.
Yeah, a question actually that I want to throw to you, Damien. Mark Young had asked another question about sort of the biggest differences in audio benefiting different age groups. Can you talk a little bit about some of the metrics on there? Mark makes the point that usually when you're thinking about podcasts, you're generally thinking about targeting younger folks. TV, you tend to be thinking about targeting mostly, older demographics. Anything that you all, and then obviously to the rest of you after Damien, can share in terms of where audio is better for younger voters as opposed to older?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think that I'm kind of on the fence of it. I think it's easy to say that podcasts are targeted at a younger audience, but I really think it depends on the content of it. There are children's podcasts which are targeted at very, very young, obviously well below younger age groups, and I think whether it's true crime, business, science, sport, I think they get a range of different demographics. So I think podcasting, you will get all ranges of age, depending on the content. So if you're targeting the right content, you're going to get the right age and demographics of people that you want to connect. No doubt, I would imagine younger people have probably adopted podcasting as a their more used method, whereas streaming something like the Spotify's, the Pandoras, the big streaming platforms like that maybe are a younger audience. But again, radio has always been thought of as that kind of older person's, when my grandparents used to listen to their wireless, as I said, when FDR and Churchill were talking back then. But again, radio content is so diverse now, and that the stats show that the listenership in a younger population is increasing primarily now because of smartphones and, smart speakers and all these different devices. Whilst maybe radio as a traditional medium was considered an older person's thing, the devices we can now consume through are a younger person's domain now. So, that you can download your content, you can listen on your commute, your run, in the gym. So it's more the context of where you're targeting people and what they're listening to is more of a guide, I would say personally, to their age, rather than just thinking podcast is for younger, radio's for older, TV's for whatever it might be.
Well, and if we think bigger than podcasts, also, we have smart speakers that are everywhere now. And I've been reading a lot of articles about how smart speakers are actually helping the elderly have a friend. Like they live alone. And so their family is setting them up and showing them how to use this and all of that stuff. And so there's a real opportunity. And those are people that vote, they're stuck at home. They're trying to find something to do. They have their family coming over once or twice a week. But here they have smart speakers and they can check out podcasts, they can find out the news, they can do lots of things. So this new technology is being used by a plethora of different ages and demographics. And so there's a real opportunity there, because I was talking to Wayne about this the other day. Smart speakers are fascinating to me because they came out of not a necessity, but just out of somebody was like, oh, this might be fun. And so people went and bought them and they stuck them in their living room and they go, okay, now what? And they're still waiting for that answer. There's a lot that has not been explored with that. And I just think there's a real opportunity there. Also for the generation, because this was a question that was popping up, for the generation that's more adept at television, my generation, that's our parents, and we are very loud with them, cut the cord, trying to get them into the new technology. So yes, they may be stubbornly holding on to it, but we're speaking up and saying, this is getting ridiculous. You're spending a ton of money, do it the new way. So they are starting to kind of see the change and they are starting to move. So yes, there is TV, there is broadcast possibilities, but who knows how long that's going to last, honestly.
Well, also, one thing that we're starting to look at is using the audio in an Sonica ad to trigger an Alexa activity. So you just click on it'll say something like ask Alexa and it'll do it for you, and it'll be pre-programmed in a way that is effective.
And actually, if I could just follow on that, on the smart speaker point, because it's something that we've talked about at our couple of recent campaign tech conferences. The importance of voice search and how important it will very soon be for political campaigns, also as a delivery mechanism for content. I throw it out to anybody. Additional thoughts on that, because it is something that folks who are producing and pushing messages on behalf of campaigns do need to be thinking about, and for the most part, they're not yet thinking about.
Yeah, well, I think that what we learn every day as we talk to people that are interested in using our technology is that there are no boundaries to how technologies can come together. We merged audio and images together and created a unique file that does that. There will be ways of delivering banner style advertising in TV and outdoor. Outdoor with facial recognition, although with us wearing all of our masks, it's a little hard to tell who you are. But I think we're in an age where there's all kinds of possibilities. But I think one thing that it really is we have to get back to is we're all living in an unnatural environment at the moment. I think I've made my cats crazy by being at home. We have families at home, we have multiple devices, we have TV, we have kids doing homework, and the ability to get messages to the right person in that environment is becoming increasingly difficult if this goes on for a long period of time, which it may well. So hybrid technologies, forming partnerships, and in a way, the people that are on this webinar today, we've all kind of come together as individual businesses to create what we call the Reach Key Meet Voters initiative, and it's helping people who are unfamiliar with audio and audio strategies to kind of come to us and help them figure out what they need, and then do whatever's necessary to make them effective in the campaign.
Exactly, and just to kind of quantify some of this stuff as well, because we've talked a lot about some conceptual stuff, which is great, but I'm sure there's a lot of people listening who maybe haven't done any audio or are thinking about it but aren't really sure. And we're kind of the converted, because we produce this stuff, or we test this stuff, or we put the ads out there. So obviously we think audio is great. But going back a couple of years, one of our partners, Katz Media, did a study. It was specific, but they were just interested in seeing how audio can impact swing voters in Florida. And I think, and excuse my understanding of US politics, but I think it was a Senate or congressional vote, or so obviously it wasn't a presidential vote, but they took a TV campaign and the audio from that just to see how the impact of audio versus television actually was. And I'm just going to check the stats on my sheet to make sure I get them right, but audio actually managed to deliver 93% of the impact on TV. And the sincerity was 97% that. So almost the same as TV. But actually, the audio scored more highly for being inspirational if you use the right messaging and the right voice. And ultimately, the increase in intent to vote for that candidate by the swing voters went up 8% on audio, which was exactly the same as television. So although it was specific to Florida, that's some actual stats that say, if you're targeting swing voters, audio isn't the weak cousin of all of this. It's as impactful and as strong to get the messaging across for candidates.
And if you think about it too, if you go back 100 years, we all gathered around our radio, and that was the form of communication. So people are worried about, that there's not these big events for fundraisers and for spreading the word and all of that stuff. It's just that things have kind of ebbed and flowed. There's just different ways to communicate. And even though radio has morphed into something else, it's spewed into like all these different kinds of mediums, but it still holds true to where it was 100 years ago. It is effective. It is more sincere. It's stripped down. Somebody was talking about seeing CEOs, in their homes, making messaging and all of that stuff. And I like that a lot better. Even like the late night guys, it's kind of funny because like their microphones aren't as good. And you look at these YouTubers and it's like the YouTubers are way ahead of these late night guys that are making ridiculous amounts of money. But it really shows what those late night people, what their power is, and their power is storytelling, and it gets past all that other stuff. You don't have the band coming in, you don't hear the applause that have been told for the people to applause and all that stuff. It's totally stripped down, and it's just them telling their messaging, and it's still fun because you know more why you tune in for something like that. So I guess I'm just, saying the same thing over again, but I think that it is the rawness of it makes you more legitimate, more sincere, and it invites that person into someone's living room that much stronger.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, with Gina. And, the interesting thing, Jennifer Naylor put up a question a little while ago about local campaigns and also cost for it. So the interesting thing is when you're trying to paint an image for a candidate or a product or anything, but specifically in politics, you're working with often campaign footage, sound bites, events that someone was a speaker at, and a lot of times it's not great for TV. It's just not lit well, not shot well. Someone walks through, you don't have the rights clearance. The setting isn't as inspirational, the message, but when you're taking the audio and you're taking the imaging and you're putting them together, you can paint the picture. Someone can be, I think Damon was talking about from an inspirational standpoint, all day long in politics, where someone is communicating an incredible, inspirational message, and then you don't use it because the video is not good. right? But by combining audio with really good imaging in banner ads and GIFs and different things that can be delivered digitally and also through social media and all platforms, is not only can you deliver that messaging that might never see the light of day, because again, it just wasn't shot well, and it wasn't being shot for it. It was just something that happened naturally, or that great moment. Well, now you can capture it, but also you can use lots of different versions of it. So instead of sending out that same banner ad over and over again, people, again, it goes back to the content. What's the content? What's the messaging? And is it fresh? Don't deliver the same thing over and over and over again. Repetition is good. So you can have a campaign slogan, and that can always be the slogan, or a positioning line. But what is the subtext to it? What is the secondary messaging? That can change. That can be hyper targeted to something, and you can mine all your campaign footage. So for a local campaign, this is highly cost effective and highly engaging way to deliver messaging. It has. Again, going back to what Damien and Gina were both saying, it's going to be more inspirational, engaging, and cost efficient, and you can work it on a daily basis. I mean, William was talking about how fast Ad Sonica you can put things up. I mean, it's remarkable.
And the other thing too about broadcast advertising and such. Especially going into the streaming end of it, because that is where things are going. If you're advertising, let's say on Hulu or Netflix or Disney Plus or any of those streaming sites, there's a large population of those subscribers that have opted out of advertising. So I foresee that that's going to happen more and more, because people don't want to be interrupted by the content that they want to watch. So as this subscription model continues and people start opting into no ads, where are you going to advertise? So again, to, kick a dead horse or whatever that saying is, we need to find new sources of advertising, and it can't be just a push sell. And a lot of times, and I'm not going to say all the time because part of my company is video production, but a lot of times it is just kind of glitz and glamour and it's just fluff. But with audio, you have this opportunity to really talk one-on-one with someone.
Yeah, and audio ads typically aren't skippable, whereas we can record TV on our DVRs or whatever we call them these days and fast forward through the ads. We can go out and make cups of tea. But if you're listening to your podcast and you're engaged in the content, or if you're listening to radio and you're engaged in the content, you can't pause that, fast forward the ad break. You can't skip the ad break. So, it does tend to, I forget the stat. There was a very good stat recently I read about the listenership, the completion rate of people listening to audio ads. I mean, in podcasts, it's like way up in the 90s, high 90s%. But that's the other benefit of this medium is people kind of have to listen to it, but they will listen to it because it's done well. It's less intrusive. It's part of that intimate environment that they've chosen to engage in.
Yeah, and also what's really important is that Ad Sonica ads are really lightweight. I mean, they very often go through the ad blockers without any kind of problems. And we try and stick to IAB standards. So it's very possible to do a 15-second voiceover and a banner ad and have it come in under 150K, which, that's well below the requirements of the IAB for ads. And they serve just like regular image ads, so they're not being premium just because of the multimedia content. All the magic happens in the browser. It's completely invisible to the server.
A question for you, William. This was asked earlier about sort of other platforms, as it were, kind of serving these ads beyond just, display networks. Could you speak to that and where else, campaigns can reach people?
Yeah, so I mean, the ads have the capability of being run on any of the social media platforms. I mean, we've tested it on Facebook and Twitter. I have somebody that's going to try it on TikTok, and they can be embedded in standard websites. So even if you choose to use audio as the conversion element, it can sit on a landing page and give people a choice of what they want to hear. So we're game to pretty much try anything, because for the most part, the ads are so lightweight that they don't interfere with the typical situation. And perhaps at the end of the day, the most important thing is there's no coding involved. There's no knowledge involved in making these ads ready for serving. So we don't interrupt your workflow. We don't require you to hire people that know anything special. So
you mentioned TikTok then. If any of the candidates can sing or dance, I would love to see them do one of the dances or songs that are going on TikTok.
Or no, I think lip sync, lip sync.
That could be fine. I mean, it might improve approval ratings to the younger people. So that's the answer to the question. If you want to get young people, do a dance on TikTok.
Yeah, I'm not even on TikTok. There's too many social networks. I limit mine. I did want to say to Susan, she asked about listening rate article. There's tons of articles, but there's a really great resource if you guys want to see like statistics and stuff. I go to them all the time. It's called voicebot.ai. They have so many statistics that you can read about the world of voice right now and what's going on. They're a great resource. So I just wanted to plug voicebot.ai.
Yeah, a question. Go ahead, Wayne.
Well, I was just going to say, in just talking about how the technology actually works too, is, there's another aspect that I always look at for messaging as well, whether marketing or branding or call to action, whatever it is behavior, right? So if you can behavior alter someone, if you can, cause someone to do something that will engage them more. And so we all know, click through buttons, call to action, click through to go to the next level. But what happens with audio too is there's a listen button, right? And the Williams technology, the audio could just come up also, but I think it's preferred that there's a button. So as soon as you say listen and you have to click on it, you're now engaged, right? So where you're scanning, you're looking at your screen and you're seeing different ads around, that says listen, and now you're engaged. It clicks. We know that you're going to listen more because that's human nature, common sense. And so there is a behavior part of it too. Not only are we painting all this, but we're causing the person to become more engaged in the ad. And then again, that's where it becomes, going back to the hyper targeting and nimbleness of what you can do with audio versus video in changing the messaging. So if you're changing the audio or change the thing and you click, now it's a new experience each time. And by the way, when the more new experiences, the campaign sounds like it has more, backing behind it and support, because to a person, again, from just a behavior standpoint, is when they see lots of variety, they know that costs money. And if it costs money, that means there's support. So when you see someone, even on a local basis, and fresh content is coming, you're getting them with fresh messaging, repetition of underlying messaging, and also the appearance of more support. So just the simplest things, in this technology, even in just how you engage it, I think it helps an impact.
Yeah. In the last few minutes we have left here, I want to go back to a question we had on data that was asked by Hallie Panic, because in the campaign world, obviously everybody wants to make data-driven decisions, and that's the sort of goal. And at the moment, one of the challenges is we're in such an uncertain environment. We know media consumption patterns are changing drastically as people are stay at home, working from home, and trying to kind of navigate that. Hallie's question asks, generally speaking, are there any sort of gaps in the data needed to successfully target using audio? So that base question first, and then a second, follow up from me, anything that, we've learned even over the past, 2 to 3 weeks that, says this environment is quite a bit different than it was, 6 months ago.
Yeah, so I think difficult times are when people should be placing unique bets. When I look at the New York Times every morning, the advertising is from advertisers I've never heard of before, because the space is available and they jumped into the vacuum. but this is all uncharted territory, and the big winners in the 2020 races will be the people that adopted or tried new things that nobody else is currently doing. I'd love to say that all House races and all Senate races are going to be running on Adsonica, but that's not going to be the case. But on the other hand, that one or two or three candidates that steps up could win big. I mean, that's a marketer's nirvana in some ways, is to have no conflicting voices. But I think the one thing I've really learned over the last few weeks talking to other founders and marketing types is that we're entering what's going to become kind of a new informality. I mean, people are just they've had a real near-death experience with this. I mean, this is, I'm 65, and this is, unlike anything I've experienced in my entire life. And it's going to take years to get people back to this. So people are really hungry for authentic, easy to consume information, and they want to hear from their candidates why they should vote for them. And big rallies and events are probably not going to happen. So we think that the technology that we have and that just audio in general is really the way to go. And the people that are brave and make the bets now are going to come out winners on the other side of it.
I think there's comfort in the fact that we're all in this together. Our bottom line is going to be different. Our way of doing things, our framework, everything is different. So yeah, there's definitely going to be gaps in information because this is uncharted territory. But like William said, now's the time to try something. If it's uncertain already, then let's try something new, because the things that have been proven, quote unquote proven so far, aren't going to fly. We have to do something different because life as we know it has completely changed. And I don't think it's ever going to go back to where it was several months ago. Yeah, we'll end this social distancing, which will be great, but it's going to be different.
Yeah, and in terms of gaps in data, I think just going back to that, the gaps in data that often exist that are there because people haven't tried something, so they haven't enabled themselves to build up that pool of data. And in audio, particularly, one of the big gaps in data is this concept of testing things before you put them out. Everything else you do around planning a campaign, the data tells you how to breathe, how to eat a campaign. But why put something out in the market, a voice, an ad, the combination of the two, without testing it to make sure it resonates? Is it going to be remembered? Is it going to have the right impact? Is it going to be authentic and likable and trustworthy? And you're building all these different campaigns. So test it first. Why risk putting something out, spending money on it, and then it's much more expensive to fix a campaign and fix messaging once it, like, oh my, we've said the wrong thing. We said it's the wrong people. Get that right first. And then, it'll have better payback in the longer run. And what we've learned recently, look, it's UK statistics and it's supermarkets rather than presidential campaigns. But we did some analysis just looking at how UK supermarkets have altered their messaging around COVID-19. Just to see, because we're hearing a lot of people are a bit nervous about advertising generally at the moment. How do we sound against serious content? Particularly something as sensitive as a presidential campaign. And just over here, done the right way, the stats were really clear that purchase intent increased dramatically. How you were viewed alongside serious content increased dramatically. And that just builds longer term brand equity. And in this instance, it's not brand equity. Well, it's the brand of the candidate. So we've kind of seen and shown that you can do this the right way if you test and think about the way you're putting these campaigns out.
I would just also add that one thing that we've all talked about together and just in the industry in general is that because of the pandemic and because of the crazy world that we're living in right now, is families are together. And where through the last decade and a half, 2 decades, everything has gone from marketing where families viewed and watch and listen to things together all throughout history to nobody's listening together and everybody's in their own world and they're on different devices. and now they're coming back together. So at this time, there really is an opportunity to connect, inspire people, not just on even on a one-to-one basis, but on a family basis, and in individual communities. And technology can help us, deliver those messages.
To wrap this up, William, I'm going to hand it to you. One thing, just a thanks, obviously, to everybody who joined us and to put some questions into the questions tab and has chatted throughout. We do have some questions that some folks have asked, for contact details for some of our speakers, and to anybody who has asked those questions, we'll make sure after the webinar to facilitate that. So thanks again to you for joining. Thanks to our speakers, and William, I hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks again for taking time out of your busy days to listen to what we have to say. But we feel really strongly that the 2020 campaign is going to be fought in really different ways than any election I've been part of, and we as a group have come together under the banner of reachkeyvoters.com to be a resource to people looking for these different capabilities. And we invite you to go to that site. And also I invite you to go to adsonica.com. We have a number of demonstration political ads that'll give you an idea of what's possible, all of which were done kind of by me in my little home editing suite, but really meant to show how easy it is to get a really powerful message out. And again, thank you very much for allowing us to sponsor this hour.
Terrific. William, Damian, Gina, and Wayne, thank you so much for your time this morning. Thanks so much for your insights, and look forward to seeing everybody hopefully on our next webinar. Thanks, everybody. Stay safe, stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.